Welcome back to another episode of 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Today we're joined by Chris Stevens, a man whose journey of loss, resilience, and advocacy is both heartbreaking and inspiring. Chris grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, just 18 months apart from his brother Mike. The two were inseparable. While Chris went to college, Mike chose the Navy and later returned home to build a life and run his own tile business. But behind the hard work and determination, Mike struggled with alcoholism, something he had battled since middle school. In 2017, those battles became too heavy to bear, and Mike tragically took his own life. Chris received the devastating news while on a family trip. In that moment, his world changed forever. But rather than let his grief consume him, Chris laced up his running shoes and began #Miles for Mike, a movement to honor his brother's memory and bring awareness to the struggles veterans face. That journey eventually led him to become a marketing coordinator for Stop Soldier Suicide, where he now uses his voice and platform to help save lives. In this conversation, we'll talk about Mike's story, the realities of mental health and addiction, the weight of grief, and the powerful ways Chris has turned pain into purpose. We'll also hear about his upcoming run in the Marine Corps Marathon in Washington, D.C., honoring the 250th anniversary of the Marines. This is a story of loss, resilience, and the unbreakable bond of brothers. Please welcome Chris to the podcast.
You're listening to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the bravery of the first responders and the families who stand behind them. Real people, real stories, real heroes. This is 8158. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of 8158 Podcast Stories of Sacrifice. Today's guest is we have Chris Stevens. He works with Stop Soldier Suicide. I'm going to let him tell his story as to why he started that journey and the other journeys that he had begun. So, with that being said, how you doing, Chris?
Good to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to share about Mike and my journey. I always say this is Mike's story, and I'm just honored to get to continue to share it. So good to be here.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and let you take the floor, and you can start from the beginning and tell us your story and the journey that you took and why you started working with the company that you started working for.
Okay. So Mike is my brother. Mike was my brother. We grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. I always say we grew up in the best times, late 70s, 80s, and early 90s. All the good stuff. We were only 18 months apart, so we loved like brothers and we fought like brothers. Always together. We worked together, played sports together. I took the easy way out, went to college after high school, and Mike enlisted in the Navy. Mike joined the Navy right out of high school. Mike had a lot of ups and downs in high school and in life, and he got back from the Navy and struggled some and died by suicide Memorial Day weekend 2017. So it's really been my life's work. Honestly, it's been a huge part of my life since then to honor him, to make sure that his story is continued to be written through my work with Stop Soldier Suicide. Now I've been there about 2.5 years, through a community of supporters, started a movement or an effort or whatever you want to call it, called Miles for Mike, which has allowed me to share Mike's story now across, all over the world, which is amazing to me. So it's I always say Mike wouldn't understand the fuss. He would just smirk and shake his head at all of this, but he would be 100% in support of helping veterans. So we're going to keep going. So it's just been an amazing, 8.5 years. My mom, told me I had the perfect job, and it didn't sound exactly right when she said it, because, I wish I didn't work for Stop Soldier Suicide. I wish there wasn't Miles for Mike. And I wish that I could text my brother and complain about the Cincinnati Reds losing 4 straight tonight. So, it's bittersweet, in a way. And there's, as much as it's meaningful to me and it's perfect to honor him this way, there's definitely some rough days. I miss him all the days. And, but if, I've got to go forward, I'm thankful that I get to bring him with me with all of this.
So since he had gotten out of the Navy, had you noticed any difference in his mental health or any kind of the dynamics between your relationship as brother and sibling?
Yeah. I would say, in high school, you could chalk some things up to just youthful, shenanigans or whatever words you would use. But I would say once he got back from the Navy, that was really my first time getting an up close look at definitely some struggles that he was having, some really significant swings, either in person or after I had moved to Georgia and he was still in Cincinnati, literally being on the phone with him all night and reaching a point where I was just begging him to get some help, because I really could see that this just wasn't normal, and it was more than just that he wasn't sober. It was more than just the alcohol. Mike struggled with alcoholism literally his whole life. He started drinking at a young age, and it was hard for me, because alcoholism isn't a black and white thing. I never understood it because it wasn't something that impacted me, and how can he and I be 18 months apart, have the exact same childhood, the exact same upbringing, the exact same support system, and, be that different, and have something like that, impact him so significantly and not me. But definitely when he got back from the Navy, it was just, he was just, I guess, not the same, honestly. He was keeping up at work, he was functioning, but it was more and more difficult for him to get through the days.
So obviously he had somewhat of a rough time adjusting to civilian life, even though that he had started his own business and owned a home. What do you think drove him into an entrepreneur?
Yeah, he loved helping people. No job was too big or too small. And I think that was, by running his own business, he was able to, help as many people as possible. It was pretty common for him to get a job on a street and go into a house and spend 3 or 4 weeks. And by word of mouth, 6 months later, he had done 4 houses on the street, refurbishing floors and backsplashes and kitchens and basements. And, I think he really, really enjoyed that. Honestly, at the time of his death, he was flipping a house with a neighbor, and he loved that. He had really, honestly, he was doing really, really well. At the time of his death, as far as his work, he had really come through some difficult times professionally and was doing really well. So that, that kind of made it a little harder, even, as hard as it was, it just made it even that much harder. But he loved helping people. I always joke that Mike took great pride in the fact that if it couldn't be fixed with duct tape, I couldn't fix it. And every time I called from Georgia and said, buddy, I need you, he would drop everything and come running down here. And whether or not it was putting together toys Christmas Eve for my kids or putting tile in my basement or whatever it was, he was amazing. And, you know, we've been in this house 20 years now. And I can't tell you what a gift it is that every room in this house he has touched, and it's perfect. You know, everything that he fixed, whenever he fixed it, it's as perfect as the day he worked on it. So maybe someday we'll leave this house, but it'll be hard because he's worked, you know, he definitely put his imprint on it. So I'm always thankful for that.
So he left the spirit in that house.
He did. He came down here. We had some flooding, and I asked him to come down here and tile the floor, and we had ripped up the carpet, and he came down here and it stormed again, and he literally laid tile in a half an inch of water, and that tile is still as perfect today as it was the day he laid it. So I don't ever want to leave it. And my daughter was real young at the time, and she watched him from the steps, and she was real interested, and he let her come down and help him grout. And she was awful, and she made a mess, and he waited for her to go to bed. He ripped all the grout out and he fixed it, and he never told her. And, you know, it's a story we tell with great love, and it's a memory we cherish. So, you know, he was a fantastic uncle, just like he was a fantastic brother.
Right. You know, looking back, what signs of struggles did you recognize with Mike that weren't so obvious, but now that you see they were obvious?
You know, it's hard. You know, Mike kept to himself, and maybe that was one of the problems. You know, one of his good friends told me that he used to come into the bar in the evenings, and nobody would speak to him. And he would go sit at the end of the bar, and nobody would speak to him. And they would wait and see what kind of mood he was in before anybody would speak to him. You know, they just kind of waited to see where he was mentally, I guess, or socially or whatever. So I think he struggled with relationships and friendships and trust and things like that. We're actually working on we're calling it a program evaluation here at work, and there's different things that we're looking at, like trust and finance and feeling trapped and things like that. And whenever we do things like that, I think of Mike, and you know, I think he fit in a lot of those things, but it was hard because he kept them all, you know, like a lot of veterans do when they get home. They struggle to share those things, you know, and especially, you know, if they do reach out, it's hard to share those things with a stranger, you know, and if he's not sharing them with me, you know, who's probably closer to him than anybody, you know, I don't know how I could expect him to share them with anybody, but, you know, I think he really struggled with trust, and you know, he you know, finances is one that we put on there, and Mike struggled, you know, he worried about his finances, and, you know, he was a one-man show. You know, he owned his own business, but he was a one-man show. And if he wasn't working, he wasn't getting paid, and he wasn't paying his bills. So, you know, I think that wore on him some too. You know, he used to joke that he didn't have a retirement plan, you know, and, you know, I think that wore on him too. You know, you know, what he was doing was physically demanding. I mean, I can't imagine laying tile for a living. You know, I helped him just enough to know that it's not something I wanted to do very often. So, you know, but, you know, he really kept things bottled up, you know, like we see so often, unfortunately.
Yeah. It is sad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. Yeah.
You had told us before, like 2005, when things fell apart for him.
Yeah.
How did he handle those ups and downs?
Yeah. He just, those were really the darkest days. I was in Georgia by then. You know, leading up to then, he had bought a house he had bought a truck. Things were going well. He lived close to my dad in a little community, and he was doing well. And then, 2005, 2006, the housing market kind of crashed, or, whatever. And he just kind of gave up. I mean, I visited just enough. He had stopped answering the phone. He had stopped getting his mail. There was just literally a pile of mail in a box at his house. He'd stopped filing his taxes. He had just kind of given up. And then they came and got his truck. And that was kind of the last straw. And at that point, he couldn't work. And, at that point, my parents got involved. My parents were divorced by then, but they always remained friendly. And my mom got his truck back for him. And then he moved in with my dad nearby, and they kind of got him back on his feet a little bit. I think he started over, but I don't know that he ever really totally recovered from that. And then, it got a little better. We moved my dad to Georgia in 2011. So then Mike was at Dad's house by himself. And I think that helped him a little mentally. He felt like he was on his own again. But, I don't know. I think it just got harder and harder for him to believe. It was harder and harder for him to find joy, I think. It was harder and harder for him to find happy. He hated celebrating his birthday or holidays. He would always just be gruff about it, like it's just another day of work for him. We always celebrated opening day for the Reds, but other than that, he really just didn't care about Christmas or anything like that. He was a tough person to love. I would send him care packages on his birthday and things like that. And I guess he appreciated them, but we used to joke growing up that we weren't an I love you family. It didn't mean we didn't love each other, but we didn't ever say it. We used to be at friends' houses, and we would hear them exchange I love yous with family members or their parents or whomever. We didn't do that growing up. It's not anything, negative. I had a great childhood. Mike had a great childhood, but we just didn't say it. And Mike and I, that was always our joke, that we just didn't say it growing up. But I think he just struggled to receive love sometimes. And I think that just really wore on him through the years.
He wasn't involved in any relationships or anything. He just totally alienated everybody.
Yeah, he had some friendships, on and off. He had a few people in the community that he was close to on and off. He did have some people that he counted on and confided in, I think, through the years. The Deer Park community that he lived in was a good one for him. It was a working class community. I know he had a guy that always gave Mike an open invitation to come swimming. And the guy kept Mike's swimming trunks hanging up at his house after Mike passed, and hung his picture up by the pool, and stuff like that. So he had a few people, but I think he kept most people at arm's length. And it was a small circle. I guess is the best way to put it. It took a lot for him to let you in.
Yeah. I bet.
Yeah.
He had a lot of trust issues.
Yeah. It wouldn't take much for you to mess things up, and then it would take a long time. I don't know if you'd get a second chance.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did the impact of his passing affect your family and you when you guys had found out what had taken place?
Yeah, suicide's tragic. I mean, it's just horrible. And I was at Disney World, with my family on vacation. My mom was in Italy, and the hardest thing for me personally was that my dad was there visiting, and it's probably the one thing that I try to think about the least, because by then my dad had started to decline. And, my dad was a 3-tour Vietnam veteran, and, had started to decline his health. That's why he was living here with us. and that my dad had to be there for that is just something that it's just really hard on me. It's right up there with losing Mike, to be honest. And to be honest, I don't know that my parents ever recovered. My dad died 2 years later. I don't know that my dad ever recovered. My mom is still in Cincinnati, but my mom can't go running. My mom can't work for Stop Soldier Suicide. My mom can't share Mike's story all over the world. My mom is in a wheelchair, and she struggles every day, and she struggles to hear about the suicide crisis within the military community because it just reminds her of Mike. So it's difficult for me because I don't want to share on Facebook, all of what I'm doing because I don't want her to see it sometimes, So it's a balancing act for me. While it's important to me, it's much different for her. Around Veterans Day and things like that in September being Suicide Prevention Month, things like that. It's really, really difficult for her hearing about it every day. It's just really, really difficult. When Mike died, she wanted to tell people initially that it was a heart attack, and I think that's an honest reaction from a mom, that's having a hard time understanding why her son would take his own life. So it was just a really, really horrible thing, as it is for any family. I probably was in the best position of my family. When I got back to Georgia, for about a half a day before I went to Cincinnati, and I was able to go to church. And I got to church late, and the pastor came immediately down from the pulpit and embraced me and just stopped service. And I had an amazing support group. I had a small group at church that I had been able to share immediately with, what had happened. And, I don't know what, in the immediate aftermath of what happened, I don't know what I would have done without that support. But, I don't know, my dad didn't have that. My dad had me, and my mom didn't have that. She had her husband and me and my sister. So, it's just really tough. I know every family's different, but I can't imagine it not just being devastated for any family going through that. So many signs that, so many things that lead up to a suicide just aren't things that you see. It's just so many hidden things. It's just, you never see it coming, most of the time, and it was just, it was horrible. It was horrible. So,
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Losing somebody that close to you.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. It was a tough, I got to Cincinnati. My mom got there a few days later. I went running a lot that week. There was a running club in Milford where I grew up, the community where I grew up in, and they had heard what happened, and they made sure that I got out to Milford every day and went running, which was obviously a big part of my recovery. And I was thankful for that. There wasn't a lot of talking. They didn't ask a lot of questions. We just went running. I generally met them down there at 6 a.m. We went running and I left. And then my mom got in from Italy, and We just started processing things. You know, I joke sometimes that, you know, Mike and I were both very much introverts, and I think Mike's laughing somewhere because, you know, I'm so proactive about sharing his story, being interviewed or doing podcasts, and he'd be laughing about this a little bit. And you know, I'm honored to do it, and I love doing it. But you know, I think he's getting the last laugh a little bit. I don't know, maybe.
Little jab at you, like
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what do you wish more people understood about the hidden battles that veterans and service members face on a regular basis?
Yeah, I guess one thing that I think about a lot is, like I mentioned, my dad was a 3-tour Vietnam veteran, and my brother served 4 years in the Navy. My dad served in Vietnam in the 60s, and my brother served in the Navy in the 90s. And honestly, I know more about my dad's service in the 60s because I was intentional about learning about it than I do about my brother's time in the 90s. And I don't know. I mean, my dad saw combat, and I don't think, but I know so little about Mike's time in the service, to be honest. We were so close and so intentional about checking in and phone calls and letters. And I just really believe that no matter the generation, no matter the branch, no matter male, female, race, I think sooner or later, everybody in the military community is going to need a support system in some way, somehow. Right. I really do. And it may be a minor check-in. It may just be a quick reset, or it may be something more significant. But I really do think, and I just think we just need to be ready. And it may just be, like I said, it may just be a friend being ready to have a phone conversation, or it may need to be the VA or an organization like SSS ready to get this person into care. It's so hard, because, it's hard to understand, who's going to need care and who's not, because, like I was, like Mike and Dad, such different experiences. My dad, I always joke that if you looked up Vietnam veteran in the encyclopedia, I'm dating myself there, but if you looked him up, you could see a picture of my dad. He's quiet, didn't talk about it. Most of the stuff he only ever shared was the funny stuff. He usually only told the serious stories once, and if you didn't catch him and remember him, you weren't going to get him again. But, he was just your typical Vietnam veteran, and I was so proud of his service. But, I would think, if anything, he would have been the one that would have had difficulties. He held the same job for 33 years. He raised 3 good kids. He was married for 26 years. He struggled with some health issues late in life, but other than that, he had a good life. Mike had a good childhood, had every opportunity to do what he wanted to do. Mike and I had we both played sports in high school. We had the exact same job in high school. We ran a carry out. We had a lot of the same friends. He chose to join the Navy. He got home. He lived at home for a little bit, but, I would have thought that he would have had a good life too, to be honest. It's just hard to know. Gosh, it's hard to know what these veterans are going through day to day. It's just, 6,400 a year for 22 consecutive years. More than 6,400 have died by suicide a year for 22 consecutive years. And it's just just amazing to me. I mean, and I had no idea when Mike died. I mean, I didn't know. And it's just too many. I mean, it's just, we got to do better, and we got to be ready to help them, help them however we can. So,
yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that's the best I can do for Mike. I can't save Mike, but I feel like Stop Soldier Suicide kind of saved me. So I feel like that's my turn to, and I'm not on the clinician side. I'm not ever going to speak to a veteran on a professional level, through our Roger care, but, just doing what I do for Stop Soldier Suicide. I mean, I just want to do my part to do anything I can to support our efforts. And, maybe someday, I'll look back and believe that maybe I had a small part in helping this, helping these veterans.
Right. Yeah, I'd say that advocacy is a good thing for us as those who haven't served and we're looking from the outside in.
Yeah.
And those of us who have lost loved ones that have served either in the military or in the first responder world. That's kind of like what we're doing with this podcast is showing that advocacy for the mental health aspect of it, and sharing with people that, our veterans and our first responders are people.
Yeah.
They have lives, they have feelings, they have thoughts, and they have families that love them and want them to come home every night, and we want to bring awareness for the mental health aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
And that's the main component, is having that awareness for the mental health issues that they carry on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, a lot of the things that we're doing here, we are really working to not only help veterans, but a lot of our efforts are geared now toward solving suicide, and through some different efforts. And we're not solving suicide to help the military community. We really believe that we are going to solve suicide so that we can help first responders and doctors and pastors. And this isn't something that we're just going to share with the military community. We really feel like this research and these efforts are going to help everyone. I mean, we're talking about, we're losing middle school kids at this point. Everybody's being affected by these same, the hopelessness and the feeling trapped and these different things. I mean, it just feels like it's growing. It feels like it's going in the wrong direction, honestly. The numbers that I see that I'm plugging into the collateral that I'm doing, it's not always getting better. I've been here 2.5 years, and every 6 months or so we update these different sheets, and sometimes it's better, but sometimes it's not. But we really feel like, when we get to where we want to go, this isn't something we're just going to use. I mean, we're going to share this with everybody. And, I really feel like that we're going to help people in a big way.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you guys are doing a great job. And unfortunately, the statistics are very high for suicide, not just within the first responder and military veterans, but, all over the country.
Yeah.
It's definitely a hard thing to deal with. Imagine seeing those statistics firsthand is not a good thing.
Yeah. I have to, I've shared this a lot with people since I started working here. When Mike died, I was so proactive about honoring him. And, it wasn't long before I got involved with Stop Soldier Suicide. And then the Miles for Mike effort, kind of grew from there. But I I never really stopped to focus on suicide. Yeah, it was part of it. And I was so thankful to raise support and share awareness, but I wasn't ever sitting at home thinking about the night he died or talking about suicide personally. And then starting work here, I was talking about suicide every day. And it was an adjustment. It really put Mike's suicide really into focus a little bit. And it made for some tough days. I mean, it really did. But it's been good too, it's part of it. And, in some ways, some of the things I've learned since I've been here, it's helped me in a way get to know him a little better. And, so that's been, kind of a good thing in a way. Maybe I understand things a little better now.
What has been the most difficult part of carrying on his memory and his loss, and your guys' loss forward?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned, I think balancing things within my family a little bit, both certainly with my mom, it's a little difficult sometimes. But sometimes it's hard. Mike was always really busy, and sometimes I can just pretend that he's really busy and we're going to catch up soon. And then I realize, I'm not going to hear from him. And I guess keeping him in the present, it really makes it hard sometimes that, I'm not going to get a text. I'm not going to get a phone call. I'm not going to get a visit, and there's some tough days. I mean, there's some days when I have to step away. There's some days when I share a lot on social media. I share every day, but then there are some days when I need to take 2 or 3 days off and just kind of catch my breath a little bit. Because sometimes I just really wish he was still here. I wish we could, catch a Reds game, and so sometimes that's hard a little bit. I think sometimes I'm a little selfish about all of this too. Selfish because, like I said, Mike wouldn't necessarily want all this, but selfish too because maybe in the beginning it was so important to me. It was so important to me, and maybe I didn't ask my family first. Hey, I'm gonna create Miles for Mike, and I'm gonna create this, way to honor my brother. And, so maybe, that was a little difficult at first. I think I should have been a little bit more upfront with my family in the beginning, but, so it was just really, really important to me to get moving forward with him. And, I probably should have done it a little better in the beginning, but we're definitely all on the same page now. And it really has all been a blessing now. So, but it's just, I just try to stay away from the night he died. It's probably the hardest thing. One of the major projects we're doing here at Stop Soldier Suicide is called the Black Box Project that we've been working on. And I've been working on the layout of it for the past 2 weeks. And the research is about cell phones and of people who have died by suicide. And literally reading this has been like losing my brother over and over again every time I read it, because it's going through their phones, and it's been really tough. It's been probably the most difficult few weeks since I've been here. But I know how important it is too. So, like I said, it's research that's going to help. It's going to help first responders. It's going to help, so many people when it comes to solving suicide. So I know how important it is. It's just hard sometimes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, you'd mentioned that you had created Miles for Mike. You turned your pain into action. How did running become part of your healing journey?
So I had started running in about 2007, and we had talked about Mike's smirk a little bit. Mike always kind of thought it was kind of funny. Mike was a rock climber, so we definitely climbed mountains differently. But and then so when Mike died in 2017, most runners will tell you, it's definitely how they cope with things. And it wasn't, the morning after he died, I went running, and it wasn't too long after I got back to Georgia. I did a running challenge for Stop Soldier Suicide, got involved with their Facebook community. And then kind of along that same time, I just asked the running community on social media to use the hashtag Miles for Mike to help me honor him. And it just honestly grew from there. We kind of organized some group runs here in Dalton. We did some 22-mile runs on the anniversary of his passing. We did that for a few years. And then it actually kind of just became a daily thing. I've got a guy in Australia that posts every single day, Miles for Mike Miles. And then it kind of grew into taking the bracelets. I send out bracelets. They say Miles for Mike on one side, Stop Soldier Suicide on the other. And people take them on adventures. They'll show up in New Zealand and Africa. And I've had people post from a glacier and just all over the world. And it's been amazing. And I feel like, the more places his story gets shared and he's part of these adventures, I just think that that's amazing. And it just keeps his story moving forward, keeps him in the presence. And it's just another way for people to, be talking about the suicide crisis within the military community. And it's just another way to raise awareness. So it's, I never would have expected a hashtag to create such a ripple effect. But it's been amazing. And for me, it's good because, I'm 51 and I go through some seasons where I don't run much, and it's hard. And, they really pick me up, to see those Miles for Mike, by these people that are running a lot more and a lot faster than I am, just, that they're turning in these miles and representing so well. So that helps me. It helps me mentally a lot, just to see that people are still out there, when I can't be. So it's been amazing.
All right. So obviously you had that kind of a support system with your Facebook community, wearing the bracelets and all that stuff. How has connected with others through running and telling your story helped you progress with your own grief?
Yeah, as soon as I got plugged in with the Facebook challenge community with SSS, sharing Mike's story was addictive. And I think both sharing Mike's story and hearing other people share their stories, it's such an amazing community. And it's, not everybody's a lost survivor, but everybody has a connection to the mission somehow. And it's just such a amazing community. And I think we all draw strength from each other. And it's, wherever we're at in our journey, it was perfect. I mean, it was everything I needed at that moment. It was something, I can't even explain it, to be honest. That was the most important part. The running was great. Yeah, I was raising a little bit of money. I was getting to spread, I was learning about the mission and I was spreading some awareness, but getting to share Mike's story and hearing these other stories was absolutely amazing. And it's continued. That's been the biggest thing over the past 8.5 years. Every single time that I send out a letter, there's, some kind of exchange where I'm sharing Mike's story, but I'm getting a story in return. And that's been the best part. It's just been amazing. And it's not always a suicide lost survivor story. A lot of times it's just a military connection. I run for my grandfather who was a Marine or something like that. Just being connected to the military community. It's such a big community, and it's just it's been so important to me. And it's been an absolutely huge part of my healing. And I hope that I've been a big part of other people's healing. I hope that by hearing my story, it's helped motivate them to share theirs and to maybe join a challenge and to be proactive about sharing their story.
We will return after this quick ad break.
The William H. Bill Butler Jr. Foundation is on a mission to honor first responders and support those who serve. We provide scholarships for families who have lost a hero in the line of duty, offer second chances to juvenile offenders who are working to rebuild their future, and help new recruits pursuing careers as first responders. Through generous donations and the sale of merchandise, we're building a community that uplifts, empowers, and creates lasting impact. You can be a part of this mission as well. Visit 8158podcast.com to donate or shop today. Together, we can support those who serve, honor those we've lost, and give hope to those who need it most. Behind every badge is a story, and behind every story is a sacrifice. This is the 8158 podcast, where we honor the lives and legacies of first responders and their families. If our mission speaks to your heart, if these stories move you like they move us, join us on Patreon. For just $5 a month, you'll get ad-free listening, exclusive merchandise, behind-the-scenes content, and video episodes only available to our patrons. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement, and you can be a part of it. Support us at patreon.com/8158podcast. Let's continue to share the stories that deserve to be heard.
It's inspiring for people, and it gives them hope.
Yeah.
You come together, and when people share their stories, it opens up a space for them, and it gives them comfort knowing that they can share their stories as well, because they're not alone.
Yeah.
In this process. And there's
Yeah.
other people that have gone through the grief, and there's people that you can talk to.
Yeah.
And people that care.
Yeah.
People that you can trust and care, because they've gone through the same thing.
Yeah. I one of the first things I learned after losing Mike, there's no timeline to any of this. And if anybody tells you different, I just don't agree. I'm never going to stop saying Mike's name. I'm never going to stop grieving. It's just going to be something I carry with me. My life is forever changed, but I'm okay with that. This is all of this has allowed me to move forward in a positive way, but it doesn't mean that every day is good and every day is perfect, but it's just my way forward. And I think that other people need to understand that, you don't grieve and get over and move on. There's nobody needs to be told that, it's losing somebody close to you, keep them with you, say their name, tell their stories, find ways to honor them. and it doesn't have to be a running challenge or anything like that. Just continue to talk about them and tell their stories and keep them, keep them fresh in your mind. I think that's the most important thing. I guess that's what I would want to tell my mom, I guess, my mom spent most of my visits with my mom over the past couple of years have been in the hospital. And she was talking one of the last recent visits, and she was actually talking about Mike and I always let her bring him up because it's hard on her. And she was talking about him and his wrestling or something like that. And she said something like he was a good boy. And I said, yeah, he was a good one. And she said he was a warrior. And that's something that I can't unhear. I've probably said that in my mind 1,000 times since she said it to me, because he was a warrior, and it was perfect. I mean, I couldn't have said it better. She was struggling. Her hospital stays have been long lately, and for her to say that, it was just amazing to me. It was perfect. So, so just keep telling their stories. I think that's so important.
Right. Yeah. And as far as grieving your loved ones, the grief never goes away.
Yeah.
I lost my
100%.
mom over 20 something years ago, and I've never stopped grieving her.
Yeah.
And we just lost my cousin last year, and that's hard. That was a hard blow.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll ever stop grieving him either.
Yeah.
He was, a very good man. And like my uncle, he always saw me more as a son than a nephew. So
Yeah.
my cousins, we were more like brother and sister, even though we didn't have that close relationship. And Billy and I didn't have as close a relationship as I did with my cousin Christy, because we were closer in age.
Yeah.
But, he still saw me as a little brother growing up because he was always good to me.
Yeah.
you
That's perfect.
So
That's good. Yeah.
but it's going to be hard. Grief
Yeah.
never goes away. You just
Yeah.
got to learn how to channel it and deal with it in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And carry
Channel.
it. You got to carry
Yeah.
it different.
Yep. Yeah. That's exactly right.
So, what led you to join Stop Soldier Suicide as the marketing coordinator in 2023?
Yeah. So, I got involved, probably by 2000, by late 2017, I was involved. I kind of became an unofficial brand ambassador. I'm here in North Georgia, and beautiful trails here, beautiful North Georgia trails. And every time I was up in the trails, I had my Stop Soldier Suicide hat or shirt or whatever. So I got, to a point where I got to know some people, and it was so important. It was great. I got to have some phone conversations and got to share Mike's story personally with them. And this kind of went on, for a while. And I was a regular in the challenge space with them, and just amazing people. And so honestly, I kept up with their job postings, and they had a job posting in January of 2023. And I answered the job posting, and the person that would become my first supervisor there saw the resume come across, and he said he grabbed it. And he said, "It's the Miles for Mike guy." So we had actually communicated on social media, but he had communicated through his personal account. So I didn't even, I didn't know his real name or whatever. So anyway, so I had 3 interviews. And everybody I interviewed with, I had met already. So it was really a full circle moment for me. And it's been, it's been a little up and down. It's a nonprofit, it's a little bit of a roller coaster, but it's been great. I'm thankful. The people are amazing. The mission is amazing. I've kind of transitioned into the creative specialist role. I'm pretty much the in-house graphic designer, which is I've been doing graphic design for 25, 30 years now. So I'm definitely more comfortable with that. So that's how I kind of support things from that end now. But it's amazing. I love getting to see all the different efforts. They kind of, everybody kind of does their part, and then I put the creative touch on it before they move forward and put them out in the wild. So, I can't think of any better way to honor Mike, so I'm just really thankful. I get to work from home, which has been great. Fantastic people for sure.
Right. Sounds like it. I
Yeah.
need a job that works from home.
This is my first job working from home. And it was a little bit of an adjustment at first. It was real quiet. I used to go around, turn on all the TVs and stuff. But I'm used to it now. So it's been good. My son just went away to college. So now I'm really home alone. So just me and the two dogs. So, but it's good.
Like getting out of driving truck and just focusing on the podcast. And because, I drive full time, and then I come home, do the podcast, and then we do the merchandise. And then I have a life coaching course that I'm putting on that we're going to be presenting for people. And then we have the nonprofit that we have to address and do things with. So it's like a constant, and I want to put all of my focus and effort on that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've been driving truck long enough.
Yeah. I bet.
I think 20 years is long enough.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Wow. Lots of keeping you busy for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty much, from the same era you guys are. I was born in 77. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you guys are what, like you were 4 years older than me. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mike was born in 76. So real close. Yeah. He was born in January 76.
76. And I was 77.
Okay. Yeah. So real close. Yeah.
Yeah. We're close in age.
Yeah.
So we're from the same area.
Yeah. And not too far. Yeah. I'm, Cincinnati and Kentucky or whatever. Not too far.
Yeah. I actually lived in Ohio for quite some time.
Oh, okay.
We're originally from California, and my mom moved to Montana. So I went to go stay with my mom in Montana, and I lived there for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And then she passed away, and I ended up moving to Michigan to be closer to my dad. That's where my cousins and my aunt and everybody lived. And then I moved down to Ohio because that was closer to where I worked.
Okay.
So I didn't have to drive a half an hour, 45 minutes to work every day.
Gotcha.
And I was still within 20 minutes from my family. So yeah, I lived in Montpelier, Ohio for about 7 years. And I worked at the Menards Distribution Center.
Okay.
In Holiday City for like 4.5 years or so.
Okay.
The rest of my time there, I was driving truck for other companies that hauled out of Menards. So you know what Menards is.
Yeah. Ohio. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. They're all over the place up there. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that was a good job. It's interesting. I love Ohio, and I definitely love Ohio State. So
yeah.
Can't say I like Cincinnati. Like as far as I like the Bengals. I think they're a great team, but my favorite team is obviously the 49ers because I'm from the Bay Area.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
But I got to give it to you. Cincinnati's been awesome. Bengals have been doing great.
We're hoping this is. We're hoping. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
You got a good team. You guys got a good team, man.
And I didn't even realize the Bearcats play tonight, so I'm gonna stay up late tonight and watch it. I hope it'd be past my bedtime, but I'm gonna stay up tonight.
So let's talk a little bit about your perspective and what makes Stop Soldier Suicide their mission different from the fight against veteran suicide. What makes it different than all the others?
Yeah, I kind of touched on this a little bit. I'm not as well versed as far as a couple things. So first of all, we've been around 15 years. And so we really feel like we are in a position to solve suicide. That's kind of the one side of it. But then as far as helping veterans and service members, we have Stop Soldier Suicide, but then our wellness center is called Roger. We created our Roger Wellness Center a couple years ago because obviously having your company name with suicide in it, it could create a barrier for some people. So we created Roger, which obviously is a military term, that
Right.
is A-OK. So that's our wellness center. And I'm not as well versed on all of the different programs. But what I can tell you is they're working. We are seeing that we are preventing suicides, that veterans and service members that are going through a cycle of care with us are coming out with improved overall well-being. We're seeing that they're entering our care and they're talking about things that they've never talked about before. We're seeing that we're hearing that they're talking about suicide for the first time, honestly. And that's huge. I mean, we want that, because if it's something that they're battling, we want them to be able to talk about it. So,
Yeah.
Our clinicians are amazing. Our wellness coordinators are amazing. And, like I said, I'm actually working on a program evaluation right now, and the numbers are amazing. I mean, we are seeing that veterans and service members that go through our care are seeing improvements across the board. So we really feel like our biggest thing right now is scaling and finding and getting to the veterans and service members in time. We feel like if we can get to them in time, we can help them. So it's just a matter of scaling. So between, the technology aspect of it with our black box project and our wellness center, we have the perfect combination of capabilities to help these veterans and service members. So I wish I could speak better about the specifics as far as when a client enters our care. I just don't have that knowledge quite yet, but all I can do is look at the numbers and tell you that, it's working. So, I really do feel like we're getting close, and a lot of the collateral that we're working on, we're designing it right now. We're pretty close that we're not putting military photography on it. We're putting firemen and policemen and things like that, because we're ready. I mean, we're anxious to continue to collect this data. And when we're ready and we have enough of it, we want to release it in a way that's going to impact all of these communities. So I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, we want to solve suicide, and I think that's just amazing. So, I think that's what really, really excites us all about this mission. We're a smaller company, but, a smaller nonprofit, but we are doing some amazing things.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I interviewed a gal not too long ago. Her husband was a military veteran, and she knew something was wrong at that moment. and she kept begging him to get help. And something snapped, something triggered him, and she could tell that he wasn't right. And
Yeah.
she had to tell the kids to get out of the house. So the kids had left, got out of the house, and she was talking to him and saying that he needed to get help. And she stepped outside onto their porch, and along their porch was where their bedroom was, and she was standing on the railing of the porch, and she heard the gunshot. She didn't know what happened, and she went running to the neighbor for help, and it was a really big deal. And the police didn't know if he was an active shooter, or if he was
Yeah.
going to harm anybody else. They didn't have any idea, so they had to send drone into the house to see, and they discovered that he had committed suicide. And she wants to get involved in advocacy for that and try to help out. She just doesn't know where to turn.
Well, from that was one of the things that for me, as much as Stop Soldier Suicide is built to help veterans and service members, they're also built to help people like me and loss survivors. And, the Black Box Project is built to, we have families loan us devices. That's how, it's a special relationship, and it, it's not just a transaction, because we understand what a commitment that is. Personally, if somebody would have called me or contacted me about, hey, could we have Mike's cell phone? We think we can do some good with it. I would have done it, but we understand not everybody's ready for that, so, everybody's different, because that's very personal, but, that's a huge way to get involved. So right now, the data we have, it's very significant, but we need more data, so that is one way that we're trying to grow. We just released a white paper with kind of like the first major report from the Black Box Project and the findings, but we just need more devices is the biggest thing. So, right. Things like that is a huge way to get involved, but, and then other things, just different, there's all kinds of different ways to get involved, but yeah. Stop Soldier Suicide is amazing as far as finding ways to help people like me and loss survivors, honor their loved ones.
Yeah, I might give her your guys' information and see if there's anything. I don't know if she's still. I know that her husband. This happened like 9 months ago, so it's fairly recent. Yeah. I don't know if she still has his phone or not. Okay. So it's been a while. Yeah. Recent, but while. Right. Yeah. I could forward this Stop Soldier Suicide to her and have her reach out to you guys. And that's another thing we're really working on. We're trying, veterans and, veterans are going to own a gun. It's just, it's the culture of things. We're trying to create a buffer, a pause between, a moment of struggle and the gun. So that's another area that we're really trying to work on, is gun safety, so that, if a veteran is in crisis, that there's a pause, something, that there's a safety measure between, that gun being accessible. So that's another area that is also part of what we do. So, and that was one of the biggest, I probably should have, that was one of the biggest surprises for me with Mike. I had been in Georgia.
I've actually lived in Georgia now longer than Ohio, which is amazing to me. I guess it means I'm getting old, but Mike had an arsenal of guns. I had no idea.
Wow.
I had no idea. You know, he used to send me clips from the shooting range, automatic weapons and things like that. But I never really thought anything of it. And it was just never my thing. But my sister got there and they were just laying around, just dozens of them. And I had no idea. I mean, I think of things, sometimes I think of things as far as money. And I was like, well, how did he afford all that? Just from that standpoint. But, so that, I guess that would have been another sign had I been there, and I don't know that he had a lot of company at his house, but, so, that's another thing I wish I would have known that I just didn't, but, it's tough.
So tell me, what kind of work do you get to do now that keeps Mike's legacy alive through your career?
Well, honestly, everything I do now is, Mike is stamped into everything. I feel like everything I do, I get to continue to write his story. And that's amazing to me. I get up every day, and whether or not I'm sending out bracelets, I'm on the clock with SSS, I'm running, I'm training for the Marine Corps Marathon. I'm posting on social media, I'm raising money, I'm, for the Marine Corps Marathon or whatever, whatever. It's just amazing to me. I mean, I've been on the trails here in North Georgia, and people that I've never met have run by me and stopped and yelled, "Miles for Mike." And that's just, it's amazing, and yeah, I've got a Stop Soldier Suicide shirt on, and there's probably not a lot of those on the trails, but it still means a ton to me, and I'll take it.
Right.
So, it's just, I don't consider myself lucky, because I lost my brother to suicide, but I'm thankful that I have found a way through that I get to honor Mike in such a big way. He was fantastic. I mean, he was amazing. And I had the best seat in the house, from being altar boys with him to, and which is just hysterical, by the way. But, we were baseball umpires, and we look like the Two Stooges out there, which is just hysterical. We were like a comedy act. But I remember things. I remember his high school graduation, and I was in the upper deck, and I remember just for some reason looking down, and he was just standing there, and I remember being so proud. Just, it's one of those core memories, because I knew he was leaving for the Navy any day. And right. I remember the first time I walked into a gym and watched him wrestle, and just confirmed that I would never get on a wrestling mat with him. And I was, I get so mad at him about silly things like brothers would, but, I remember the last time I played catch with him, was at his house in Deer Park. And, I remember the last Reds game we went to, we caught a foul ball from Ken Griffey Jr. And as a Reds fan, it doesn't get any better than that.
Right.
And Mike still would tell the story that I landed an elbow to his neck right before the ball got there. So I caught it and he didn't. But I don't remember that part of it. But I buried Mike with that ball, so I knew it'd be with him for safekeeping. So, getting to show him that the respect, Mike was my big brother. and he was 18 months younger, but he was my big brother. And I'll always say that he set the pace and called the shots, and to show him the respect that I had for him by the work I do now for him, I will never hesitate. I will never regret changing course. I could have stayed where I was at and had some cush job and coasted through the next 15 or 20 years of my life. But, I'm going to keep running and keep climbing mountains as long as I can. And I can promise you Stop Soldier Suicide gets my best every day. And, I wish I could tell him all about it. I wish I could just tell him. I wish I could have 15 minutes just to tell him all about the last 8 years. But I don't get that. But, he used to come to Maryville all the time to watch me play football. Every time he'd get a few $100s together, he'd fly from Virginia Beach to Maryville to watch me play football. It was just a little Division III school. And, everybody there probably just met him once or twice. And after he died, you wouldn't believe all the people from Maryville that reached out. He made such a big impression to people. He just, he was one of the good ones for sure. So, I'm just thankful that everything I do, literally from the time I get up in the morning till I go to bed at night, literally is a piece of Mike is involved. It touches Mike, and I hope it helps the veteran community, the military community in some way. So
I imagine it will.
Yeah.
So in closing, what message would you give to families who are grieving a similar loss, or to someone listening who may be struggling with themselves?
Yeah, I kind of said it earlier. Don't put a timeline on it. I never will. I'll never stop grieving. Find a way to keep loving that person, to keep celebrating him, him or her, to keep remember the good stuff, to keep celebrating the good stuff, and, find ways to honor them and celebrate them, to, maybe support a mission, somehow, some way. But I think that's the biggest thing. Just keep saying their name, keep, that, one of the first people I met here, Crystal Clark, who is still with SSS, she's a fundraiser, and I wrote her a letter early on telling her about Mike, and she still carries that letter with her as she travels. And you just have to know that you keep telling those stories about your loved ones, and it means something, and it's going to inspire people. And just keep telling those stories, because it's going to, it's going to make sure that those people live on, and their stories continue. So, I'm going to keep telling Mike's story. I've told, even tonight, I told some things that I haven't thought about in a long time. Sometimes I talk about him, and I feel like I've said some of these things a few times, but I'm so thankful tonight because some of these things I haven't thought about in a long time. And that's a new memory with Mike. And that's why I do all this. Each time I go running, each time somebody shares a bracelet picture, it's just a new memory and with Mike. And that's keeping him in the present. And that's for me, that's maybe the selfish part, but that's for me, that's what this is all about, is keeping him here with me. So, I guess, I don't know if I answered your question, but just keep saying their name, keep telling their stories, keep keep celebrating their birthdays, keep celebrating them at the holidays. I've got a collection of old Reds hats, and nobody wore a Reds hat like Mike. And I look so bad in his Reds hats. I mean, we look so similar. Somehow he looks so great in these Reds hats, and I look so goofy. But every year on his birthday, I put on one of those Reds hats and go running to honor him and remember him and feel close to him and find your way to honor your people. So
yeah. So with those who are struggling, what do you think that they need to know how to reach out?
I really believe in what we're doing. And if you are part of the military community, stopsoldiersuicide.org, and we will be in touch. There's a button to click, and somebody will be in touch really, really quick. But I know that there are so many amazing organizations out there. I wish that I had a list or a bunch of numbers, but I really believe that there's help out there for everybody. On the flip side of that, real quick, I can't tell you how many texts I send out every day. Hey, just checking in. And that's all the text says. And I've got like a dozen people in my little circle that they get that text every other day. And it's just a silly little text, and they're probably tired of it after all these years, but they get it. So keep checking on your people. But if you're struggling, there are people out there ready. And hey, just text a friend, hey, I'm not doing good. Can you help me find somebody to help me? But there are people out there ready to help, especially now. I mean, I think as more and more people are struggling with mental health and anxiety and depression, and, there are more and more organizations and places to go and people ready to help. So I think we all need to help each other, find those places and help each other get to where we need to go in time. So.
Exactly. There's a lot of help out there, and we're doing our best to get connected with other organizations and to get help to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think 15 years ago, I know it was so hard to say these things. It's not hard anymore. It's not, there's no stigma anymore. I mean, if you're struggling, tell somebody and get the help you need. It's time. I mean, we've got to fix, we've got to fix this. We've got to help the people that need it.
Exactly right about that. I definitely appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. My heart goes out to you and your family for your loss, and we definitely appreciate your brother's service. You sound like an amazing person.
He was, yeah.
Somebody that was the life of the party, somebody that you just really would like to know.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So that's all I have for you tonight. Hopefully we can have you back on at a later date sometime down the road and kind of reconnect with you and see how everything's going.
Okay.
And see where you're at and see how your studies are going.
Sounds good.
That'd be awesome.
I appreciate it. I sure enjoyed it. Always love sharing Mike's story. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. It was a hard story, but even I started getting kind of in my feelings too. It's hard to hear, but that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help people grieve. Not to eliminate the grief, but just to kind of help them grow.
Yeah.
Help them carry it differently.
Yeah.
Like giving them a voice to speak it out.
Yeah. This was good for me. Like I said, sometimes I just kind of go through it a little bit, but I really enjoyed finding some unlocking some old memories tonight. Was special for me. So I really appreciate the opportunity. It was good.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
We definitely are honored to have you on here, and we appreciate you sharing your story and Mike's story. So
Yeah.
uh, that's all we have. So I won't take up any more of your time. I know you're probably pretty busy, so
I'm good.
but we'll be keeping in touch with you, and uh, hopefully we get to have you on here again. So,
Sounds good.
all right, Chris, you have a wonderful night.
All right.
Take
You
care,
too.
buddy.
All right. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
All right. See you.
Bye.
Bye.
That was Chris Stevens with Stop Soldier Suicide. His brother was a Navy veteran. Obviously, you've heard the story. So, listening to the story, if you know somebody that is in your family or a friend, or you just know somebody that is struggling, please reach out to them. Don't let them suffer in silence. Try to get them as much help as you can, even if they don't want it. Figure out a way. Reach out to them. Let them know that you love them and that you want to support them as much as you can. We're going to do our part with this podcast and continue to reach out to people, try to connect with other organizations, and to try to build relationships with them so that we can have more uh, outlets for people to reach out to. So we're going to try to do our part. That's how, like I said before in previous interviews, that's how we show our love, is through action. It's not about just the talk, it's about the action. So yes, we have a podcast, and we talk about these things, these hard things that we come across with the mental health and people losing their lives to suicide, and people talking about suicidal ideations and such. So we are trying to reach out and give people an avenue, whether it's coming on the podcast or reaching out to an organization to get help, whatever the situation may be. That is how we are showing our love, is through that action, which coincides with the foundation, the William H. Bill Butler Jr. Foundation. These are some of the ways that we are showing our love, is through those actions. We thank you all for coming on here and listening to this podcast, supporting us, and just remember, please listen through all the ads. That is our ad revenue, so that we can keep the podcast rolling. So if you just be so kind to continue to listen through the whole thing, all the way to the end, that would be very helpful and grateful for us, because that's how we'll keep the podcast rolling. If you do that, we would love and appreciate that. That's all you got to do. It's free. You just listen, and it helps us. So, and it helps us bring more stories to you, to our listeners. If you haven't subscribed to Patreon, please do that. If you want to see the videos, the content, the special contents, and all that stuff, you have to, subscribe to the Patreon, and so you can check all that stuff out. So once again, good night, everybody. This is 8158. Love you. God bless. Thank you for joining us on 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Every story we share is a tribute to the courage and resilience of first responders and their families. If this episode impacted encouraged, or inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who supports first responders. Follow us on all social media platforms at 8158 Podcast for updates. 8158 Stories of Sacrifice is a team effort. Rico brings the stories to life through casting, writing, original music, and editing. Brianne Shipley as production manager, handling booking, social media, graphics, promotion, marketing, website management, and logo design. Please visit our website at 8158podcast.com. For questions, collaborations, or to share your story, our email address is contactus@8158podcast.com. Until next time, let's continue to honor the legacies and remember the sacrifices of those who serve, every brave man and woman on the front lines, protecting and defending us all. This is Rico signing off and honoring 8158.